Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 28th, 2017, and this is your fun fact of the day. Grab your torches and pitchforks and then set them down. Yes, I am going to talk about submission. Yes, this is a very controversial topic. It is important. And yes, a womanly woman is submissive. Most women would say, submission, I'm not a floor mat. Submission is a horrible thing to keep women in line, and it's terrible and sexist and outdated. First off, false. Secondly, maybe. Thirdly, you probably have a poor view of submission if that's what you think. Or you have a really horrible example of what submission should look like. That is not what it looks like. Submission is the act of yielding to another person. So really, if you think about it, we do this all the time without calling it submission. For instance, the fact that I am in front of this camera giving this talk instead of Ben is really a form of my submission. I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to hash it out again. When Ben did Manly Mondays, I was like, Ben, you have to do Womanly Wednesdays. Ben said, I'm not going in front of that camera, you are. And I said, I'm not going in front of the camera. And he says, well, if you want this, yes, you are. And so I submitted to that. I have had a really awkward time talking in front of this camera, and yet I thought Womanly Wednesdays would be a great fun fact, and because Ben said I should do it, I submitted to him. I yielded what I wanted to what he wanted, and in many different ways, you do it too without even really realizing it. For instance, I'd like tacos for dinner. I'd rather have burgers. Fine, we'll have burgers. Boom, submission. Someone wanted tacos, someone wanted burgers. You end up with burgers. Obviously, a woman being submissive to her husband does not mean everything is what the husband wants. It doesn't even mean that she follows what any man ever wants. In fact, as far as submission is concerned, the only ones you should be submissive to are your husband and your bosses if you have them. You don't need to be submissive to every single man ever you meet. That is ridiculous. If you're using the Bible as an example, the Bible only says wives submit to your husbands, not women submit to men. It's wives submit to husbands, and then slaves submit to masters, which in a contextual means workers submit to your bosses. Other than wives and husbands and slaves and masters, or workers and bosses, there's no talk of women submitting to everyone. So don't let yourself get trampled by every man ever because you think you should be submissive to every man. False. Absolutely. Now, for those that are married and think that, now I'm married, I need to be submissive to my husband and everything he says goes, not really the case either. So you don't need to do everything they say. For instance, you are to submit to your husband in the Lord. You have a submission to your government and to God before you are submissive to your husband. So if he's asking you to do something unlawful, you have every right, in fact, an obligation to say no. If a husband is abusing his wife, she should not just take it. That's not what submission looks like. Because, fun fact, there is an opposite to submission. It's called love. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, submit to your husbands. These are things that should work together. And if husbands are loving their wives and wives are submitting to their husbands, submission isn't a burden. It's not supposed to be. So, Ben talked about husbands loving your wives Sunday. Mainly because we were going to talk about submission today, and I really needed context of what husbands should be doing. Husbands need to love their wives, and wives need to submit to their husbands. If a husband is not loving his wife, not that you should hold your submission above him, but if he's not loving you and he's beating you and mistreating you, you don't submit to that. So I'll give a couple examples of what submission could look like. I'm an analogy type of learner, so I use a lot of analogies in my life. So let's say a man gets offered a job, but they have to move super far away. Loving his wife, the man will propose the idea to the woman. He won't say, oh, I've got a job, we're moving, whether you say so or not. And the wife's like, well, I have to be submissive, so sure. No, that's not what it looks like. A man would propose this to his wife, be like, okay, honey, I got this job interview, but it's we'd have to move, but we'd be making this much more money, and this is all the good things that would happen, and we'd be moving here or there, let's do a pro-con list sort of thing. The wife doesn't want to move because, her kid's school is there, it's a great school, her friends are there, she likes where she is, and they talk about it for a long time. They discuss pros and cons all the time, pros and con lists. So they've discussed it for a long time. Here's where things can diverge. After doing a pro and con list, the husband can see, yeah, there's really more cons to leaving than there are pros, so we're gonna stay. Or the wife can be like, there are pros. It would be a good thing for our family. Let's go. We'll do it. You talked and you both made the decision together. However, if at the end of the day or months of talking about this, husband is like, no, honey, I really think we should move. This is a better opportunity. There's more money. It's closer to family. I've thought about this. This would be a great move. And the wife is like, I still am not convinced. I want to stay. And they're at a complete impasse. Either they will move or they will not. Somebody has to yield. It's just a fact. Somebody will have to yield to make this relationship stay together. This is where submission comes into play. As long as moving wouldn't be unlawful or putting their family in undue danger, this is where the wife should say, I still don't want to move, but we're at an impasse, and so I will submit and we will move. That is what a womanly woman would do. This is mainly just so impasses don't destroy the relationship. This is why there is a role of submission, because if it was like, you decide every single time and you get to the point where you can't decide because you're both on opposite sides, you're going to go separate ways. So submission is a way to keep the family together, to really just have an order of things. Now, these type of decisions do not happen every day. So submission isn't like a daily constant burden. Because of the give and take of husbands loving wives and wives submitting to husbands, things will ebb and flow. And there are very few times where it's like, all right, bring out the submission card. That doesn't happen every day. It really doesn't. Some more analogies. For instance, I have a lot of ideas of how our house should look. I personally picked out all but 2 room colors in our house. And that's because I literally asked other friends to pick them out, because that was going to be their room and I wanted their color. And even that was like something I decided. I ran them all by Ben, so it wasn't like he showed up and I just had everything done. This didn't happen in one night. So I ran them by Ben, but he pretty much gave me free rein. Now, because I loved Ben, I picked some rooms, some colors, some themes that I knew he'd appreciate. For instance, our living room has green and white stripes, because if we ever watched football games in our house, that's where we would watch it. And if we watched a football game, it would most certainly be the Spartans. And I know he likes green and white, so I picked that color because I love him. And I love MSU too. Our newly renovated bathroom is a cow theme because Ben likes cows. So we have white walls with black spots everywhere. It's fun to have little quirky things. But the point is, I ran these all by Ben, but it was like essentially my choice. So clearly, in this paint chip sort of way, I wasn't actively submitting to my husband's every whim. It's not that he didn't have a say in the paint colors, but in general, that's what I did. If he would have said no to a color, I could have stated my case and we could have gone through this, but more likely I would have just picked a different color. Just because in this case, it's not worth the fight. And I didn't feel like super strongly about something to the point where I would start a fight about it. But this example just shows how submission shouldn't be bearing down on a wife. In fact, my husband and I will often joke about this idea in small things. Usually over things like, what are we having for dinner or what are we going to do? Do you know that scene in the Jungle Book where the vultures are sitting there going, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Oh, we do this all the time. I say, what do you want to do? You say, I don't know. What do you want to do? And can we just do something? Okay. What do you want to do? We do that all the time. Except for us, it usually goes, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Then I'll say, I'm the wife. I'll submit to your decision. And Ben goes, so submit to me and choose something. Then I'll joke about how that's making a decision and not submitting. And then he'll be all like, woman, just decide. This is our life. But all joking aside, submission isn't being a doormat. It doesn't mean you don't have a say in the matter. It doesn't mean you do whatever he says without conversation. However, if there is a choice where neither option is bad and the wife and husband are butting heads, someone needs to yield. And a womanly woman is the one that will. You can't have 2 heads. You can't have 2 leaders when they're trying to go separate ways. Otherwise, you will go separate ways. Submission, again, is a way to keep a family together. It's so easy for people to abuse this. Submission does not mean a woman gets abused. She does not get trampled on. This does not give husbands a dictatorship authority. This does not give man an excuse to have dominion over his wife. And this does not apply for a woman to every single man she encounters. A woman is submissive to her husband, her God, and her authorities or elders. That's it. A woman isn't even submissive to her boyfriend. Learn that. That is a completely different relationship. He is not your husband. He is not your head. So, when enacted properly, submission doesn't happen often and is even a joy to a woman. I hope I've made this point clearly. I tend to ramble and talk in circles about things that are hard to describe. So once again, I'll just put it bluntly and succinctly. At the end of the day, the husband is the head of the family, and if husband and wife are butting heads and on separate sides, the husband's word goes. In general, a womanly woman will submit to her husband in a very good way and not get trampled on. In other news, apparently our camera only goes for 29 minutes, and I spoke just a minute longer than that, so hopefully everything worked out fine. I was also wearing the wrong shirt, but I'm wearing the right shirt now. In other news, it is National Paul Bunyan Day. I'm pretty sure this isn't what they mean, but whenever I think of Paul Bunyan, I think of our trophy and how sad our football team was last year. But mark our words, we will get it back someday. Scum won't have it forever. I mean U of M. It is also Insurance Awareness Day. This is meant for you to look at all your insurance, your car insurance, your health insurance, your home insurance. If you have pet insurance, look at your insurances and make sure you have the best rates possible, the best amount of coverage for your money to make sure you're not getting swindled or your rates didn't go up or your coverage didn't go down. So look at your insurance, make sure everything's in working order, call your insurance reps, have that customer support conversation with them, and have a lot of fun on the phone going, please just do what I need you to do. But also, be kind to your representatives because it's not their fault. They're just doing their job. They didn't make the rules, so be kind to them, but make sure you're not getting swindled at the same time. Hope you've enjoyed this fun fact of the day. See you tomorrow.